Greetings, dear guest. It's me, Brain, and today I'd like to tell you all a story. Magic the Gathering, a trading card game that dates back 30 years ago, bringing with it almost 30 years of lore behind each card. A very daunting iceberg for the casual player to explore. With the upcoming release of the newest expansion, The Brothers' War, I think it's time for me to take a gander at explaining just what is happening behind the cardboard. This is the tale of the Brothers' War. There are two main components of the current Magic the Gathering story: the events that are currently occurring and the events in the past, at the time of the titular Brothers' War, one of the biggest events in MTG lore. Our story begins in Media Res, with a group called the Gatewatch, basically interdimensional magic avengers, and their allies trying to hold the line against the new Phyrexians, magic metal interdimensional xenomorphs, who are trying to invade Dominaria, one of the central worlds of the MTG multiverse. Having lost Karn, Silver Vision, and the Golgotha Silex, the magic MacGuffin that was used roughly 4,000 years ago to obliterate the original Phyrexian invasion, and the majority of the world, but more on that later. Not to mention the fact that a lot of their allies are now either dead, stuck on other worlds, or have been given the facehugger treatment and are now fighting on the Phyrexian side. Backed into a corner, Magic Nick Fury enlists the aid of Iron Woman to create a time machine, and the not-so-ancient one to push his ghost out of his mortal shell and into the past, so they can find out how the original Phyrexian invasion was repelled, and maybe how to replicate the effects of the now-gone Golgotha Silex. And thus, the story of the current set comes into play. Time-traveling Nick Fury ends up in one of the most critical moments of MTG history: the conflict between two brothers, Urza and Mishra. Urza is one of the most prominent figures of MTG lore, even acting as the token mentor figure with a traumatic past towards our current protagonist, time-traveling Nick Fury. Urza and his younger brother Mishra were sent by their father to an elderly archaeologist named Tokasha to serve as her students at an archaeological dig site. Now acting as two halves of Indiana Jones, with Urza being the book-smart one who does the research, and Mishra being the adventurer and explorer, the two boys made various inventions and discoveries, including the ornithopter, which would become Dominaria's major form of aircraft for centuries to come. As most fictional archaeological teams go, it all ended when they made a fateful discovery in an ancient cave: an Infinity Stone, which is basically an overcharged version of the generic stones that Dominaria uses as batteries. Like most squabbling siblings, Urza and Mishra began to grab one end of the shiny thing and started pulling, probably yelling "mine, mine" at each other. The stone, already cracked in twain by the person who put it there in the first place, broke into two halves: the Might Stone, with the power to activate artifacts, going to Urza, and the Weak Stone, with the power to deactivate artifacts, going to Mishra. Of course, the grass is always greener on the other side, and the brothers wanted to take each other's stone for themselves. And when the conflict escalated to the point where the brothers used the stones against each other, they ended up killing their mother figure Tokasha instead, giving them both the tragic backstory that unlocked the protagonist class for both of them. The brothers went their separate ways, with Urza becoming a clockmaker's apprentice and Mishra fleeing to the desert. Urza, still a nerd at heart, heard of a contest held by the local ruler, where the person who manages to move a massive statue gets to marry the princess, and more importantly to Urza, gets a rare old book as a dowry. Using the Might Stone to build a gigantic machine to move the statue may have been skirting the rules, but in the end, Urza got the book. Oh, and the princess too. Mishra, on the other hand, got the short end of the stick. He was plagued by guilt and dark dreams, and enslaved by desert dwellers, who took the Weak Stone from him. That lasted only until Mishra received a prophetic dream of a giant mechanical monster attacking, and Mishra, with the help from the chieftain's son, retrieved the Weak Stone and basically did the hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon. And so the brothers, one now prince consort slash chief artificer of a whole kingdom, and the other a warlord of a warmongering tribe, still craving the other's Infinity Stone and both having the power to throw loyal soldiers and nigh unlimited animated machine armies at each other, began the brothers' war. Of course, bad things come in threes, and a new threat soon emerged. The stone that was made up of the Might Stone and the Weak Stone was placed in those caves to seal the portal to Phyrexia, and the brothers' removal of the stones led Phyrexian infiltrators into Dominaria. Infiltrators that were the source of Mishra's bad dreams. The Phyrexian infiltrators, known publicly as the Brotherhood of Gix, wormed their way into Mishra's close council by tempting him with the power of age-preventing skincare products. It was at this point that Ashnod, Mishra's apprentice who may or may not be his girlfriend, got annoyed that her boyfriend slash teacher would choose xenomorphs over her and handed over the Silex that Mishra's army obtained from one of their raids to her new beau and Urza's apprentice Taunos, who then passed it on to Urza. This brings us to Argot, a lush forested island filled with natural resources, protected by the island's avatar Titania. Of course, Urza and Mishra couldn't resist the temptation to reenact James Cameron's Avatar, and soon enough the island was filled with mechs harvesting everything. It was on Argot that Urza and Mishra had their final epic confrontation, filled with classics such as Mishra boasting about his immortality when Urza at the time looked like Gandalf the White, the reveal of Mishra having lost his humanity and replaced by metallic xenomorph flesh, and of course the dramatic handover by the side character Taunos of the Deus Ex Machina to the protagonist, and Urza using his finisher move and obliterating Mishra's army, the Phyrexians, the island of Argot, the tectonic plates beneath Argot, the global climate of Dominaria, the space-time continuum, and Urza's eyes, which were then replaced, in classic Uchiha fashion, by more powerful versions of themselves in the form of the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, which then gave him dimensional powers. At least, that's what happened in the original timeline. In this one, Nick Fury's time-traveling ghost, who just went through an experience that can be compared to using a nerve gear to play a game set in the 1940s, went ahead and broke all the rules of time travel, perhaps risking becoming his own grandfather, by talking to Urza and telling him of the Phyrexian threat lasting all the way to 4,000 years later. Would this last act change anything? Would this last-ditch effort save the future, and perhaps pull back Mufasa and Token Space Elf from the clutches of the Xenomorphs? We'll find out together on the next set. Once more, this has been Brain. Thank you for listening.